Welcome back. Moments ago, President Obama updated the progress in the government's effort to deal with the Gulf oil spill, calling the action the largest environmental response in history. Meanwhile, BP officials will face the heat this week before Congress, and it is likely that the industry is facing more regulation down the line. An op-ed in today's Wall Street Journal is pointing out that it is big government's fault as the problem behind this environmental disaster, not just the handling of the oil spill, but the financial crisis as well. It was written by Gerald O'Driscoll, senior fellow at the Cato Institute and a former vice president at the Dallas Federal Reserve and at Citigroup. Good to have you on the program, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Maria.
Now, in your piece today, you highlight two primary reasons for a failed response in both the BP oil spill and in the regulation in the financial industry. One is regulatory agencies take up the interest of those they are regulating rather than the best interest of the public, which they're supposed to be advocating. Why won't more regulation fix that?
Well, more regulations don't change the incentives of the regulators, which is they know the industry. They hardly ever deal with the public. They come because of frequent interactions with the industry to take on that mindset. Plus, I didn't get into it, but there's the problem of the revolving door. People who've regulated an industry frequently want to go to work for it after they retire from government. And you don't get that job if you've been hard on the industry.
So tell me what has gone on in terms of the response from government to BP. Why do you say it's as much, or the fault also should lie on government as well as BP? What's the case?
Well, I mean, it's clear that the Minerals Management Service was a rubber stamp for BP. I mean, BP asked for something in one case, they literally got it approved in 5 minutes. You could never have investigated whether that should have happened in 5 minutes. That's pretty extreme, but it reflects reality.
And why was that? They're just too cozy, and they wanted to get these permits out there.
That's right. They view their business as helping the industry succeed instead of protecting the public.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about financial regulations? Same situation? How do you come to as much government's fault as it is as the bankers, for example? Well,
I mean, I used to be in the Federal Reserve System, and I hate to pick on the Fed, but the New York Fed has always identified with the interests of Wall Street, of the major financial firms, not just the banks, but the non-banks. And they've tended to want to facilitate whatever it is the large banks, Wall Street, wants to do. And whatever your view of regulation, that's not regulation.
Yep. Your second point is that all the knowledge of an industry, whether oil, banking, or any other industry, cannot be centrally located to help regulators effectively regulate. So, I mean, it seems to me that the people working in government are not up to snuff in terms of understanding how the complexities of, let's say, swaps work, or perhaps the technology used in the BP spill. Why not?
No, that's exactly. Well, I mean, first of all, they can't know in real time exactly what the firm knows is going on at the moment of a crisis.
But why not hire people in government who have a little more sophistication about some of these things, since you are regulating them?
That's half the problem. You could do that, but you'd have to pay much, much higher salaries. Right. You'd have to have people, yeah. I mean, to regulate derivatives, you have to have people who could actually earn a living fashioning derivatives.
Yeah, and I guess the fact that we don't have business people in government is another issue.
That's another issue, but it's still, you would have the problem that you would never have the immediacy of information you need to actually do the regulation the government has promised it can do.
So what are the solutions, sir? Tell me that.
The only solution is if you really have situations where the government is the only entity that can protect the public, the rules have got to be simple and clear and provide incentives to the people who are being regulated not to slip up. And the example I gave is not from oil, but from banking. In Brazil, a director of a bank is personally liable if the bank fails. It used to be the case in the United States that all stockholders had double liability. That is, if the bank got in trouble, they would have to reinvest as much as they had originally invested.
You also say that the problem with more regulation is that lawmakers don't actually go back and understand why existing regulation failed, that they just create new rules. I was astounded, and I've said this a number of times, I was astounded to learn that there were 400 agencies overseeing AIG. 400 agencies. How did 400 agencies miss the debt that was being taken on?
You've put your finger on it. When you have 400 people responsible, no one's responsible. Everyone assumes one of the other 399 are doing the job.
So as we look at the financial reg reform coming down the pike, are we looking into more bureaucracies and more people overseeing that in the end won't oversee anything?
That's exactly what we're looking at as it's presently being crafted.
Why? What's most onerous? Tell us that.
Because the government doesn't know any other way to do it. If regulations seem to be not detailed enough, then they want more detailed regulations instead of having more general and simple rules that basically say if you screw up, you're responsible.
Let me ask you, as far as this op-ed in the Washington Post today, I want to get your take on this because it's regarding lawmakers on committees that oversee industries in which they also have a personal interest. Center of the story is Congressman Ron Paul. He's pushing to make gold the reserve currency, and he's investing his personal money in gold mining stocks. I mean, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to recognize this is a massive conflict of interest. Do you believe this is compromising regulation?
I think I would like to know why they picked on Ron Paul, because first of all, he doesn't chair any committees. He's not the ranking member. We're not going to go on a gold standard. But the fundamental problem with that argument was if we went on a gold standard, the price of gold would as likely fall as increase.
Okay, but I mean, should all of these guys who have a leadership position be invested in things that they're talking about and, in fact, trying to create policies around?
No, there's only two ways I can see around that. Either everybody's investment goes in a blind trust when they become a congressman, or alternatively, I kind of like this, is the only thing they can invest in is Treasury obligations, because they then would have an incentive to be fiscally responsible and to avoid inflation. All
right, we will leave it there. Great to talk with you, Gerald. Thanks so much, and thanks for that op-ed today. We'll see you soon.
Thank
Gerald O'Driscoll.